and it got real ugly real fast. And I honestly, after watching it all and reading it and getting all the, I'm still scratching my head and saying, what happened and why?
You know, my sense is at a certain point, and you know, I'm also not going to name names, but at a certain point, the other candidate stopped trying to win and started trying to make me lose, and I think wanted to hurt me going into the general election. I can't tell you why. I think it was personal, but you know, that's what's happened. And I feel like too often in Massachusetts, in the Republican Party, we do this sort of thing. You know,
Isn't that called the shootout in the lifeboat?
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's true, and the only person that hurts is the voters.
Absolutely.
We're not talking about issues.
We're not talking about issues.
Right.
We're talking about foibles and personal things. You know, people who supported Barney see this very differently. But during the last campaign, I really genuinely tried to focus only on things that I thought were legitimate policy issues, to stay away from the personal stuff, to stay away from, you know, the things that weren't directly relevant. I intend to do the same thing this time, because you can go after somebody very hard and differentiate on things that matter and differentiate on policy issues. I'm going to do that. That's the kind of campaign we're going to run, and you know, hopefully the voters get a chance to really differentiate between the two of us.
That's great, and I think that's what we need. So what are your top 3 issues? You want to get 3 messages across tonight. What are they?
Absolutely. So the first is jobs in the economy. I mean, that could be the top 3 issues, right?
Yeah.
That's what people care about. Last election and this election. And you go from Fall River in the southern part of the district, where unemployment is almost 12%, to Brookline and Newton in the northern part of the district, where unemployment isn't necessarily the issue, but slow growth is. Regardless of where you go in this district, you find the same thing. People are saying, I'm hurting. My next door neighbor is. We're not growing as fast as we'd like. I didn't get the promotion or wasn't able to start this business, or whatever the case may be. People are hurting. So that's the #1 issue to be addressed.
Everybody you talk to, no matter what they're doing or where they are, they're worried.
Yes.
You know, and that's not a good way to go through
No,
life. I mean,
not.
you know, that's just not a good way to be. And you're always wondering, you know, what's tomorrow going to bring? And it's just a sad state of affairs right now.
Right.
And you know, we need to make some changes, because that's where it comes from. So
Absolutely.
is our government.
Right.
And we have to make some changes, because you know what we're here now. We got to get out of here. We're not getting out of here, so obviously something has to be changed. If we all worked for, you know, company ABC, and we had people like that, and we, you know, weren't being productive, and things weren't, you know, heads would roll.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Right. You work in private business, you know that.
Right.
You know when the wolves are coming. So.
Well, and I think you alluded to something, which is in addition to the current economic downturn, you have this long-term question of fiscal sustainability. And I think for the first time in American history, people are saying, I don't know if my kids are going to do better than I did, because I don't know if they're going to have the same opportunities.
Absolutely.
I don't know if they're going to face the economy that I had and have the opportunity to succeed. And you know, 52% of people who graduated in the past 3 years are unemployed.
That's an amazing number.
People are getting out of college with huge debt loads, and they can't find jobs.
Right.
And so that's the way they're starting their careers. And what's the net effect of that? People aren't getting experience, they're not adding to the economy, et cetera, et cetera. And you create over time this stagnation that is dangerous, and we need to turn it around.
Yeah, but it's a debt-ridden stagnation. It really is.
Absolutely.
And it's, you know, people are living on credit cards, and you know, credit card interest is out of this world anyway. Student loans, it all adds up, and it's just you turn it into a debt society, and that's not, you know. And these are the people the ones that are working.
Well, and it starts at the top. I mean, the deficit and the debt. This is the second issue I talk a lot about. Just are out of control. And until we get serious about entitlement reform and get serious about cutting unnecessary discretionary spending, we're not going to get anywhere. The problem is, when you talk about entitlement spending, people attack the second the words leave your mouth. I'm surprised you guys haven't already.
No, that's because you want to kill grandma.
Exactly. Throw her off the cliff.
It's music to my ears. I just want to hear more about how we're going to cut entitlement. But you're right. They immediately try to demonize you.
You saw what happened when Paul Ryan got in the race.
Oh.
You know, immediately people started saying, well, you know, the Republicans want to get rid of Medicare and seniors on the street and throw Granny off the cliff. And that essentially happened last cycle for me when I debated Barney Frank. We debated about 10 times. After the first debate, I said, you know, we need to gradually increase the age of retirement. Not on people in retirement, not on people close to retirement, but on people like me. Next day, attack ads. Ads online, ads in the radio talking about, you know, Sean wants to rip up the social safety net, and Tea Party radical Sean Bielat, and Paul Ryan, Sean Bielat. You know, they throw in all these adjectives.
Radical.
Exactly.
You're always a radical, but that's what we need is the radical thinking.
This country was formed by radicals.
That's right.
You know, if you remember correctly, we were radicals. And it's just weird that you talk about some of these things, but they, you know, the most important thing you mentioned about Paul Ryan, and you know, immediately the ads are, you know, he wants grandma to, you know, he doesn't want grandma to hang around, you know, he wants to take her money away. Did you notice it didn't last very long?
You know,
it didn't play well.
I think we'll see more, but I agree. It hasn't. I thought they wouldn't shut up about it, but I think Americans are coming around.
Yeah, it didn't play as well as they thought it would be, and they had to stop. They have to be careful spending money on how they're spending their money, and they're not, you know, these people are not stupid. They're gonna invest their money in what they think works. And this, to me, wasn't working.
No.
Right.
That doesn't mean you won't see it anymore, but I don't think you're going to see to the extent.
Right.
And really, I mean, it was amazing how quickly that kind of, tailed right down.
In this particular case, I think there's two reasons. One is if you say to somebody, oh, you don't like Paul Ryan's plan, what's yours?
Right.
Nobody has an answer.
Right.
You know? And then if you say, what don't you like about Paul Ryan's plan? Well, it kicks people off of Medicare. Actually, no. The latest version says, if you want to stay on Medicare, no problem. You get the same program as you've always had. However, if you want some choice, you can take this supplement and go and buy private insurance. It's up to you. You have the decision as an individual. And ultimately, it'll drive down costs because people will make decisions to go to the market. You'll have lower price coverage, better coverage, more customized option. That's great. Why would you want to prevent people from having choice?
It'll probably be easier because anything involved with the government tends to take a little longer and cost a little more.
It goes the route of the Postal Service. Well, I'm giddy just for points 1 and 2, so just lay number 3 on us. What's your third issue? I'm ready.
The third is role of government. So, and there's a couple parts to it. The first is, what do we want the federal government to do versus the state versus the local? And the more you push power down to the states and localities, the better solutions you're going to have. It's a lot easier to get your selectman on the phone than it is your state rep, than it is your state senator, than it is your U.S. congressman, than it is your U.S. senator. And the reason is they have larger and larger constituencies. So the more you can push the power down, the more direct representation and access you have as a voter to decisions that are being made, and the better the solutions will fit your local area. And then there's a second question, and this is the broader vision. And on one hand, you have a bunch of people who will say, essentially, the government's smarter than you are. It knows better than you do how to spend your money.
And every one of them works for the government.
Well, or they're running for office in Massachusetts.
It's true.
You know, we should leave more decisions to government. It's going to do a better job. There's a law or regulation that can make everyone's outcomes equal no matter what their inputs are. And there's a second vision that says, you know, this is really about how do you empower individuals, how do you empower businesses to succeed, and how do you get answers from the private sector and have government be limited and only get involved where people really, truly need the help. And so this first vision is what you've heard for the past 7 decades from the Kennedy family.
Right.
And most people don't know who Joe Kennedy III is. They know the name. And the reason that they're voting this way or believing this is because they've seen this vision, this brand, and that's what they want.
Right.
This is the one I'm talking about. And I think more and more people are saying, you know what, government hasn't been giving me the answers. 3.5 years of stimulus spending hasn't made the economy better. Massive healthcare bills haven't, you know, improved my healthcare access. You know, massive finance reform bills haven't fixed the problems on Wall Street.
No, even the
banks.
smaller things. Was it cash for clunkers? I mean, the only thing that was a clunker was that program.
Right.
It ended up costing. I think it ended up costing like $67,000 a car.
Right.
I mean, come on,
And
guys.
some of them didn't need it, didn't want it,
It
but it
hurt-
was, we're telling you it's good for
It
you and we
hurt
can do
business
it.
because
Right.
it wiped out all the used cars.
Right.
It took a big chunk of used cars and took them off the block because all the cars in the program were turned in had to be destroyed.
Right.
Right.
And these are
So
cars
then you
that
had low-end buyers who
couldn't get a
Right.
car. It was just a disaster.
priced out of the market.
Oh, ridiculous.
So you're not going to do a cash for clunkers, right?
You know, that's not part of my platform.
Now, I want to just talk and just moving ahead to say, okay, now at some point, Congressman Bielat, the present Congressman Frank, he is known for one thing in outstanding constituent
Right.
services.
Right.
I mean, he is probably one of the top in the country
Right.
for that. And you got to give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
You know, you got some big shoes to fill, maintaining that level of constituent services. So you're up for that? That's what you're all about?
Yeah, absolutely.
User-friendly?
When people say, well, what did you agree with Barney on? One is constituent service, the other is his support for the fishing industry. He did both of those things well. He took care of his constituents, but there's two jobs for a federal representative. The first is to take care of his constituents or her constituents, and the second is to vote for the best national policy possible. Barney screwed up the second one royally, but he did a great job with the first one.
Well,
And I give credit where credit is due. And so I would, if they would be willing to have this set of conversations, work with the people who are on his staff, here in the district, who are taking care of constituents.
Right.
And
Great idea.
And when I say constituent services, I mean when Joe Sixpack writes a letter, you'd get a reply. You wouldn't wait months or anything else. You get a reply in a week or so.
Right.
Right.
And it was and he signed it, and that's the kind of, I don't mean policy, because I have a lot of, there's a lot of room for criticism with the policy. But as far as actual services, if you had a problem with something, or you had a question of how something worked, you could write to your congressman and get an instant response. I mean, and that's a good way to be. You want to be user friendly. You want to be, so you're going to have have the staff and the wheels to make all that work. But I just wanted to give you a chance to tell everybody here that won't drop off.
Absolutely. Like I said, that is, there's two roles. That's one of them, and it's an extremely important role. So if you're not concentrating on that, you're not doing your job.
Well, and two, I think that was leading into one of my next questions, was kind of the local piece for Sean, because he's a familiar face to us from last time, and then certainly he's been pounding the pavement, knocking doors. His staff has been everywhere. It's great. He's really digging into the heart of the district, as I always like to think, because we always like to claim ourselves as the heartland for the GOP out here anyway, and he's got the bulk of it in his potential district here, which is great. But you're already, you talk about constituent relations, which means not just answering and responding to the voters, but it's also the elected officials that are here, and you've got already a running start. You know the players. Tell us a little bit about some of your maybe experiences in Mansfield and your local connections with the elected officials
Well,
here.
of course, you know Jay Barrows well.
That one I know.
So you may have heard of him.
Yeah, we've heard of him.
Exactly.
So one advantage is that there are 160 representatives in Massachusetts at the state level, at the State House. 33 are Republican, and 8 of those are here in this district, in portions of the district. So one nice starting point is I already have good relations with them. I'm reaching out to the Democrats where possible, and there are some people who are more willing to
Are they
have
reaching
those
back?
conversations than others. I will say, to his credit, Kennedy is also doing a great job reaching out to representatives, not to voters, but to elected officials. I think that's really important. And I think, again, my role is going to be to represent this district in Washington, and that means helping elected officials at all levels get their jobs done, in support of the voters. We try and get out all the time. We do multiple events a day. They get out to all the parts of the district. You mentioned the Heartland. I think a lot of people will spend time in Brookline and Newton because there's big populations there. Some people will go down to Fall River, but there are all these towns. Mansfield and Foxborough and Norfolk and all these towns, Bellingham and Franklin, and goes on and Easton.
I was just going to say.
Well, there's 34. I can't name them all quickly.
Well, I was just even when I sat down to look, I give you credit, Sean, because it is a lot of work. That's a lot of towns to serve.
It really is. It's a big district, and they make them. I mean, it's a very diverse district. If you look other places in the country, they're not set up like that. And it's just another one of those interesting little Massachusetts things, the way the district's set up, because frankly, a lot of things people in Brookline really don't have a lot in common with people down in Fall River.
It's different.
It's a different lifestyle. It's a different, you have.
Like I said, they're still concerned about the economy, but it affects them very differently.
Yeah, that's true.
On average, for the average.
I mean, the big issues are the same. That's jobs, the economy,
and it's this country.
Taxes.
How do we get it turned around? How do we get back on?
Right.
How do we get Washington to represent us again?
That's nationwide.
Right.
And that's one thing. But I mean, as far as local issues, the things that the locals down in Fall River worry about are not the things that people in Brookline do.
Right.
And that's
Well,
it's such a diverse
town like
thing.
Taunton, you had the casino issue, and you had one part of the town taking one side and the other taking the other side, And so even within this one town, you have slightly different communities and people making different choices based on that. So you have very diverse interests in this one town. And then when you magnify that by 34 towns and the geographic stretch of the district, it does present a wide range of things.
I don't want to say there